Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you, the listener. Thanks to all of you, including Carmine Bailey, Vince Power, Chris Beneteau, and Tony Nolan. On this episode of DTNS, David Spark is here to tell us what fresh hell was unleashed at Black Hat, or was it the same old stale hell? Plus, Apple's overly complex rules for linking to your own website, and air taxis are coming. Yay! This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, August 9th, 2024 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
And joining us, producer and host of the CISO series, our friend David Spark is back. Hey, David.
Great to be here.
David.
Thank you.
I think
so
I've
much.
been on since you started. How many years ago? I was a guest back then. Whatever, how many years ago you started.
10 and a half years ago. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, it's how many times have you been on, do you think?
Oh, that I don't know. But honestly, it's mostly just around Black Hat and RSA, which happen twice a year. So maybe, minimum 2 times a year. Could conceivably say
Minimum 22.
I don't know.
I feel like you've had years where you've been on more than twice.
But I don't think we were always doing Black Hat. Anyways, I don't think the audience cares about that.
No, probably not. Let's get into what they do care about in the quick hits.
Free users of ChatGPT can now get 2 images per day generated by DALL-E 3. OpenAI also released its system card for GPT-4o, which gives details on risks and safety measures of its new models. GPT-4o is low risk for security, biological threats, and model autonomy, and medium risk for persuasion. Testers found that overall, GPT-4o was not more persuasive than a human, but some samples of its writing could be.
Google has replaced the Library tab in your Google Photos. Oh no, what with? Well, they just kind of renamed it. It's called Collections. It now includes your albums, all the albums shared with you, folders, things like people, pets, places, and folders like favorites and trash will be displayed up top. You can switch between views like all, shared, and my albums. And if you're like, I don't see this change, Tom, you're lying. Just wait. The change will roll out to Android and iOS users over the next few weeks. So eventually you'll get it. If you look for the utilities folder after this update, it won't be there. It's being removed. All the things in it are still there. They're just in other parts of the app now.
Sources from Korea's The Elect say that Microsoft has made a deal with Samsung for the kind of OLED panels one would expect to be used in a mixed reality headset. The source mentioned hundreds of thousands of units in 2026 for a device meant to watch flat screen gaming and video content. Also, The Verge reminds us that Samsung is partnering with Google and Qualcomm on a headset expected later this year.
Surface headset from Microsoft, maybe? Would they call it that? I don't know. Surface on your head. Scientists at Google's DeepMind have developed a table tennis robot that it says is a solidly amateur human level player. That's also how I'm described. It played 29 games, beat all the beginners. Okay, this is better than me. 55% of intermediate players, but lost every match against a pro. DeepMind says its biggest weakness is against fast balls, likely due to latency in processing. So the pros are fast enough to get past the latency. The team is investigating faster communication protocols and predictive algorithms to address that weakness.
Table tennis is so fast. It
in the
beats latency
Olympics,
every
it's
time.
like crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Ola Electric, which makes 2-wheeled electric scooters, listed its stock publicly on Friday and became the biggest listing by an Indian company in 2 years. Big deal. The stock rose 20% after its debut. Ola has 46% of India's electric scooter market. EV share of the overall scooter market is expected to grow from 7% next year to 16% in 2028. So, in general, e-scooters, they're a thing.
Apple doesn't like letting app makers link from iOS apps to their websites, especially when that means people can pay the app maker through that link. Various countries have various rules that have tried to force Apple to let app makers link to their payment plans. And in a lot of those cases, Apple will be allowed to charge 27% of any transactions made that way, which is actually a discount on the 30% that it takes if you make a payment within the App Store. Apple justifies all of this as necessary to defray the cost of maintaining the App Store. The EU passed the Digital Markets Act last year, and that, among many other things, requires Apple to let app makers link to their own sites for payments. It also lets Apple charge for that. So, Apple's first attempt at complying with the DMA was to charge everybody what they called a core technology fee. That meant if you had users install your app more than 1 million times, you had to pay Apple 50 cents per install, unless the app was free. Apple also took 17% of every transaction made outside of its App Store in those cases. Now, that applied to companies who wanted to do a third-party app store, do side loading, as well as a company who just wanted to link to its own website for payments. So the EU told Apple, try again. That isn't satisfactory. And the Apple folks have come up with a new policy, and they introduced it this week. It gets rid of the core technology fee if all you're doing is linking. Core technology fee still applies if you're doing an app store or doing a side load. But if you're just linking from your app in the App Store, you don't have to pay the core technology fee. It also got rid of the 17% flat fee on the transactions. It replaces it with a 5% initial acquisition fee and a store services fee that is 7% if you're a member of Apple's small business program, and 7% for people renewing a subscription. But if you're not a member of that program, it's 20%. That fee also will apply to people who do third-party app stores and side loading. It replaces the 17% fee for them, but it's actually cheaper. It drops to 5% for the initial, or it's still 5% for the initial fee, but 5% if you're a member of the small business program and 10% for the store services fee. This new policy is set to go into effect this autumn. And David, I know you're shocked, but Epic and Spotify are not happy about this and say they're going to complain to the EU and tell Apple to do it all over again. Basically, nobody wants to pay Apple for transactions that are outside of Apple's platform.
Yes, it's this. I mean, I was hanging out with a friend, and he was saying, even the mob only takes 10% here. Obviously, one of the things we're talking about the app developers, but honestly, Apple has another audience to serve, and that's the shareholders. And so obviously they're going to fight for every dollar they can. We find it ludicrous, hey, we're just trying to deal with it, but they're like, it's our platform. We have our walled garden. We're going to get as much as we can. They're going to start high, and it sounds like they're just going to negotiate down until the EU says, all right, that's acceptable. And this kind of sounds like that's what's happening.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Epic and Spotify are going to complain again, but we'll see if they make any headway, right?
Yeah.
I think also, we just recently talked about Apple's latest earnings report with services revenue up, which
Big
is
part of
good
this,
news
yeah.
for the company. What Apple gets from its App Store and third-party app stores and taking a cut of that all goes into that overall services revenue number. So, this is where Apple makes a significant amount of money. Throwing aside whether you think Apple's a villain for doing it the way that it's doing it or to have the percentages as high as they are, this is what a company of Apple's size, and yeah, like you mentioned, David, a public company, is going to do if they can get away with it. If Apple has to scrap this and go back to the drawing board, which it doesn't sound like is happening because this is supposed to go into effect in the autumn. I mean, it'll do it so that it can run its app store. And I think as a developer, which I am not, but as a developer, not only are the many different percentages just kind of confusing overall. I mean, you're going to fall into one category, but I don't know that it's totally cut and dry for every single app out there. This is annoying, and yeah, you are paying Apple a chunk of money. Apple does need to run its App Store, and the App Store is a great visibility engine. So, Apple has some leverage here, and I think it's just a matter of what can it get away with?
Why doesn't it do this for the laptop then? It's got an App Store. It could put all these rules in on the desktop and the laptop.
That's a really interesting question, because the whole concept of the sort of walled garden app store really didn't start until they started making apps for the mobile phone and for the iPad. They didn't do that for software on the on the desktop,
Yeah.
for that matter.
I think the answer to my stupid question, of course, is that everyone would freak out. It's never been like that. And so,
No, but the thing is, if you set people up like, here's a new way to communicate on a phone, on an iPad, and the way that you do it is you get it through only this app store, and and if people like it, then they buy into the universe that they created. What they would have to do is backtrack, and all of a sudden, hey, everything you're getting for free, now pay us. Well,
I don't begrudge Apple needing to make money off its app store. I think they absolutely should. It costs money to do it. It's a value service for us as the user. I have no problem with that. This Baroque Byzantine 17%, 5%, 7%. You heard how long it took me to just explain what they're doing. Is very un-Apple. I feel like Apple could come up with a better user-friendly for both us, the users of the phone, and developers way of doing this than this ridiculous system, which seems rooted in punitive behavior. Like, we don't want you to do this. And it just seems silly to me to stop people from linking to their own website. I don't think they're going to lose that much money by doing it. They just
air taxis. Air taxis
Yes,
are going to
let's
solve this, Tom.
Maybe that's it. Maybe we could just fly right over the problem.
just fly me the app, okay? Then we get around all this percentage mumbo jumbo. But seriously, air taxis are inching ever closer to reality, even though we keep getting burned. Okay, so first, earlier this week, the AFP reported that German startup Volocopter just narrowly missed its electrical vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, or EVTOL, service window during the Olympics happening in Paris. French authorities had cleared Volocopter's two-seater craft for takeoff back in July, but then certification for the engines got held up. It just wasn't going to happen, not during the games themselves. Now, back in February, California-based Joby Aviation signed an agreement with Dubai's Road and Transport Authority, or RTA, to launch their air taxi services. And the company now plans to start commercial services by the end of 2025. So, year and a half from now. Also based in California, Archer Aviation plans to gradually roll out a pretty big network of air taxis in Los Angeles by 2026. That would be in time for the World Cup happening that year, 1 year before the Super Bowl 2027, and 2 years before LA hosts the Summer Olympics in 2028. Angelinos are already lamenting the traffic problems that we expect to have for all three of these events, because LA is notorious for really bad traffic congestion, even on a good day. And the city has fallen behind on some of its own initiatives for Olympics-related traffic plans. Now, Archer's Veriports, as they're known, aka takeoff and landing locations, include LAX, that's the International Airport, the University of Southern California, big college in town, Santa Monica, Hollywood Burbank, Van Nuys, Long Beach, even Orange County. SoFi Stadium itself, and that's where the World Cup and the Super Bowl and some Olympics games will be, is going to get its own Veriport too, but not planned until sometime after the World Cup, but before the Olympics. So Archer's stuff, close to home, at least for a couple of us where we live. I mean, I'm all in, but again, is it really going to happen?
Well, they got to get type and production certification from the FAA. Type says you can demonstrate that you can safely fly people. Production says you can demonstrate that you can safely build the machines. They've already got FAA approval for testing, and they've done like 233 test flights so far. So I don't see why they wouldn't get certification.
Right.
One thing I noticed about all the locations you mentioned, except for SoFi, is that those are airports. Those are places where there is already an airport. Therefore,
I don't think USC has an airport, but it probably has a
what it
large
has?
helipad.
Exactly. It has a heliport. So you don't have to do anything there except say, can we use the heliport? Maybe put in some passenger control stuff. Those are way easier, whereas SoFi didn't have a heliport built in, or at least not one they could use anyway. So they had to build that from scratch. I'll believe it when I see it. I feel like these things are perfectly viable and can happen. They're incredibly expensive. It's hard to tell if you can build the demand. And that's why we keep hearing like, we're just going to have these ready in a couple of years. And then a couple of years go by and the story is still, we're going to have these ready in a couple of years. I don't know if I'm going to be seeing these when the Olympics hit LA in 2028.
Well, LA is a really good example just because we've got some just very large scale events happening over the next several years. Archer does say that it's planning limited commercial service in 2025. More of a testing rollout in San Francisco, Miami, obviously Los Angeles, New York City, Abu Dhabi, and also Dubai. So clearly cities that have heliports already, and that's where the service can be expanded. It just reminds me of the early days of Uber. Certain cities, and especially more suburban and rural areas, were like, this doesn't work for us. The riders don't have enough cars, and the drivers end up using their car too much for not that much traffic. And maybe something like this is going to be 25 years from now, it's like, can you remember when we just didn't fly through the sky? Everybody had to use freeways. But for now, it seems like there are some pretty obvious cities and regions where this works, and a lot of places where it's not going to work.
I'm shocked we're not seeing it in Las Vegas, David. You should be able to just take an air taxi to the airport when you're done with this.
I would like to do that, but obviously, did we all see the size of these vehicles? One was a single seater, one extra passenger, and the other, I don't know, maybe 7. Is this really going to help with crowds? You're
gonna have a lot of these moving a lot of people around. Yeah,
I think
cars. To be fair, Ubers only have one person riding in them most of the time too. So,
well, that's true. Well, but again, they can move on very
and
large
Uber also
highways.
hasn't made traffic better. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, it's made traffic worse. This won't add a car to the road, and it'll keep a rich person off the road.
So that's the other thing is price and how bad do you need this. In Archer's case, their eVTOL is called the Midnight, holds 4 passengers, can go up to 150 miles per hour. That's not as fast as an airplane, but it's faster than pretty much any car you're ever going to see on any freeway, and it can go up to 50 miles. So you're staying within some sort of general metropolitan area. Sounds like charging is pretty fast. Can charge up in less than 10 minutes between rides. I love this. I think it sounds scary, but I'd be first in line.
I think Sarah's edging for the first ride is what I saw.
I think so. You hear this, Archer?
I'll do it.
Call her up.
If I
not that
if I
far
can get
from
through Waymo, I can take to the sky.
Yeah,
Most
she
of
can
you
take
go
a
to Mars.
Waymo
I'll just
to-
stay in the atmosphere here.
Take a Waymo to Santa Monica to take the air taxi somewhere else. There you go. Easy. Done.
I'll take it to USC and then walk home.
Take the air taxi to USC and then take a Waymo back home. Folks, if you don't have money to ride an air taxi, we understand. That's why, because we don't hate you, we lowered our prices in the Daily Tech News Show store. We're trying to get rid of some stuff, so we made some discounts. There's like 70 mouse pads. If one of you would like to spend $140 on mouse pads and build a fort out of them, you'd clear us out. But if you only need one, it's only going to be $2. So you can get a mouse pad for $2, has the DTNS logo on it. Mugs are down to $5, and there's only a couple of those left. So you might want to hurry if you want to get one of those at this price. Again, temporary prices because we're clearing out the inventory, but you can get these at dailytechnewsshow.com/store. The Black Hat Cybersecurity Conference just wrapped up in Las Vegas. The show provides a forum for corporate security, government agencies, hackers, all the people to talk security. Not cybersecurity always bugs me to say cybersecurity. It's just security this day and age, right? This is how you secure most things. And this conference discusses threats and vulnerabilities to your network. David was just at Black Hat, keeping his ear to the ground. Now, David, we're not going to ask you to summarize the entire conference, but what are some of the things that caught your eye,
So really the situation is what everybody is talking about, and also what the vendors are talking about, and then the main content from the conference is discussing the threats. So let me start from the back and go forward. So for discussing the threats, I want to quote something a Redditor said on the cybersecurity subreddit, and that was, and I don't know the individual, but they said this last year, and I think it's very true. He said, what you were worried about before you went to Black Hat is the same thing you're going to be worried about after Black Hat. So all the all the new cool threats, they're kind of cool, but they're probably not going to happen to you. It's the kind of basic stuff. But I will mention one threat that is actually happening right now, and this is about deep fakes. And I talked to someone at a major, essentially a CISO, a security information, a chief information security officer, who works for this large pharmaceutical company. He said they were getting 10 deep fake sort of attacks via WhatsApp every month. Now they have thousands of employees, but I was shocked it was that high. Like it's in market. It's happening right now, if you will. Have you guys? None of you have gotten a deep fake yet, have you?
I have not seen any deep fakes come at me. I don't answer my phone most of the time, and I know that's a vector, so I might have missed them. I don't know.
Well, connected to that is the story of AI. And AI, as you kind of all know, it's really kind of come into its own in this past 2 years. We've been discussing AI in the security industry for years, but the story it's telling now is quite different, as we all know with Gen AI, and we've seen it with like image generators and Chat GPT. But in security, there are new companies that have come out just within the past year, 2 years, that simply would not have existed prior to Gen AI. And then there are the companies that are very large, huge companies that they realize they have to have some kind of Gen AI solution to stay relevant in the marketplace. So that are two areas that are sort of playing out in the industry from the vendors on that side. Now is the issue of, well, the term AI has a very, very wide spectrum.
It's almost uselessly wide, right?
Yeah, because at one end, it can just mean automation of a script. And at the other end, it can be a truly generative AI experience, but it's not thinking on its own. It still needs some kind of direction from a human. But then on top of all of that, and this I was talking to a venture capitalist, the cost of true talented AI engineers is extraordinarily high. They're not that available. So, and I'm going to throw yet even another complication on it. There is the issue of the integrity of the AI, of the quality of what you're getting from how ethical it is and how useful it is. So there's no correct answer, but all I have to say is if you're looking for a solution that has some kind of AI enabled in it, my strong recommendation is ask a lot of questions and try to validate what it is that they're claiming at that time.
So what are some of the buzzwords? I know any conference like this, especially Black Hat, introduces new terms, new significant acronyms. What are the ones you started to hear?
Well, they're not new for this conference, but the analyst firm Gartner kind of lead the charge in creating these new categories. One of the newish categories is called DSPM, and it stands for Data Security Posture Management. And this category really, it came into its own in the past couple of years. There are 34 competitors, just literally popped up recently. And what it is this whole concept of you can have data security if you know what it is you have, because not all data that you have needs to be secured the same. Some data is more sensitive than others. But knowing what we have is very difficult. Now, there's been a history of trying to classify, but it's hard to know the context and what may not be valuable in one area when combined with something else gives it context. Oh, wait a second. Now it's quite valuable. It has, because now it's connected to a human and a name, and now it's far more sensitive. So this kind of understanding of your data is very possible now that we have generative AI. And this is why this category's cropped up. When you start to classify data, here's the key thing. There are a lot of things you can do. You can see what is useless, I should get rid of, what needs to be protected more vigorously. So that's kind of a big deal. And that's what this space tries to do. I will also throw out one of the other issues that we've run into is the fact that people are using different terms and they mean the same thing. I was actually having this conversation with this one founder who was in DSPM space, and he was saying different terms, and we seemed to be disagreeing, but we were actually saying the same thing. We were just using completely different terms.
So we need term efficiency. We need term reform.
Exactly.
Yeah. Something to just like take the redundancy out of the terms. There's too many of them.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I want to also point out is the paucity of women that approach this conference or at attendance at this conference. And one of the things that the cybersecurity industry is trying to pride itself in is that there's more women joining the industry. And I keep hearing percentages of 20, 30%. Some companies claiming that 50% of their staff is women. But I'm telling you, this conference, that wasn't the case. I mean, it was more like 1% to 2% of the attendees were women. So it's possible these companies have a larger female staff, but if that's true, they should be sending them to this conference. There should be simply more women going. So this is a call out to all the security or teams that are out there. If you have women on your team, please send them to this conference and any conference for that matter.
What if they don't want to go? What if they're just like, sounds miserable? I don't want to go.
Send them anyway.
Well,
You get out there and represent.
That's your job.
I think you encourage them, like make it worth going, make it something you want to go to. Yeah.
Well, the other issue is people have a job and you got to do what your assignment is.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're saying this based on your observations, right? Do we have any actual numbers from Black Hat?
I don't have any numbers. Here's my numbers. I would look out into the field, the crowd that I would see in front of me, and I was there with a couple of friends. I go, can either one of you count more than 5 women right now? You're looking, and we couldn't. I mean, it was that bad. Like there needs to be. If there are more women in cybersecurity, they should be attending conferences. They should be going to Black Hat.
Yeah, and the argument is,
call out, please do it.
You will have people who identify different kinds of threats and think of things in a different way.
We talk about all this time. Diversity allows you to be more secure because you have different viewpoints looking at it.
Yeah,
and I'm sorry, middle-aged white men we've cornered the market on this space.
That's a fact. I don't think anyone would dispute that. All right, let's check out the mailbag.
We got a nice note from Anon Jr. on Patreon about Audible rolling out AI-powered audiobook recommendations. We talked about this in Thursday's show. Anon says, I've had very mixed luck with automated recommendations thus far. If they can meaningfully improve it, I would love it. The vast majority of my Kindle and Audible books come from recommendations from my friends, family, and trusted podcasts. I made that same point yesterday. I mean, I will rarely just search for a genre of book without someone explicitly saying, you're going to love this book, Sarah, buy it and read it.
The one thing I will add to that conversation is Sword and Laser, the book club podcast I do with Veronica Belmont, is all about helping people find books they want to read. Like, there are no shortage of recommendations, but everybody is always like, but I want a good recommendation. I want a book I get excited about. Where can I find good books? So maybe this is just playing into that as like not the place, but another place that might recommend that next book you love. And then Howard is getting a familiar vibe from all our talk around AI these days. Howard writes, the current marketing of AI-ness reminds me a lot of when every TV needed to be a 3D TV, which then vanished. My hope is that businesses focus on solving the problems people have rather than AI for AI's sake.
Yeah. I get that.
I see David
too,
nodding.
Howard.
Yeah. So there's a lot of complaints that there's a lot of AI for AI's sake. But again, what one group says about AI versus the other, they're not synonymous, the solutions.
Yeah,
for sure.
And 100% agree with Howard on that too. You want to use any kind of generative model or large language model or anything because it solves a problem, not because someone read in a headline that those are hot. We need to have those. Make it work.
I don't think anyone in the security industry goes, "Oh, AI, let me take a look." Like nobody's responding like that.
Well, David Spark, thank you for being with us. I know Fridays are particularly fun. Well, it's a fun day for us because you're with us, but it's a fun day for anybody who also wants to listen to your security show because you record it in the mornings on Fridays before DTNS records. Next Friday, August 16th, listeners can join you for Super Cyber Friday. How do they learn more about that?
So right there, that's a registration page. You get to that page if you go to CISOseries.com. You'll see click that little graphic at the top. You'll see a link to that. And what we do is a 1-hour conversation that we have with everybody. The topic is going to be hacking the demo. We're going to be talking about how to do a better demo, in person, one on video as well. And it's really engaging and a lot of fun. Just like your crowd, we get hundreds of comments over the hour, and we break it up with a lot of silly games as well, plus a lot of really great insight from our guests. So it's super fun. And then at the end of the hour, we kind of do something on Discord where we'll have sort of a face-to-face meetup with some of the attendees as well. So please join us next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
1 p.m. Eastern, so just before DTNS. And in fact, next Friday, we have Steve Zalewski from the CISO series on DTNS.
Yes.
So that's perfect.
So Steve is my co-host on Defense in Depth, and he is, you'll love him, everybody. He is phenomenal. He is a fantastic voice. He's the former CISO of Levi Strauss as well.
Oh, nice. Patrons, stick around for the extended show Good Day Internet. It's Friday, and David brought one of his games that they do over there to us. So we're going to play that. Is it Threat or Metal Band? Stick around and find out.
You can catch our show live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is 2000 UTC. And you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. We're back doing it all again next week, starting on Monday with Justin Robert Young. Talk to you then.
This week's episodes of Daily Tech News Show were created by the following people. Host, producer, and writer Tom Merritt. Host, producer, and writer Sarah Lane. Executive producer and booker Roger Chang. Producer, writer, and co-host Rob Dunwood. Video producer Joe Kuntz. Producer at large Anthony Lemos. Spanish language host, writer, and producer Dan Campos. Our science correspondent Dr. Nikki Ackermans. Social media producer and moderator Zoe Detterding. Our mods Baitmaster W. Scottus1, Bio Cow, Captain Kipper, Steve Guadarrama, Paul Reese, Matthew J. Stevens, a.k.a. Gadget Virtuoso, and J.D. Galloway. Mod and video hosting by Dan Christensen. Music and art provided by Martin Bell, Dan Luders, Mustafa A., Acast, and Len Peralta. Acast ad support from Tatiana Matias. Patreon support from Tom McNeil. Our contributors this week were Justin Robert Young, Chris Christensen, and Scott Johnson. And our guest this week was David Spark. Thanks to all the patrons who make the show possible. Thank you, Howard.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.